is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
A very warm welcome to Pulse of Africa News. Tonight we dive into the stories shaping our continent with voices that inspire and moments that move us. I'm Ada Masai and I'm thrilled you're here with us. Let's start with here in Ethiopia. African diplomats accredited to Ethiopia have praised the African Media Initiative POA, launched by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, calling it timely, necessary and vital for shaping Africa's own narrative. Resident ambassadors and diplomats on Friday paid a visit to the Pulse of Africa POA media studio in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, in their drive to show solidarity with pan-African media platforms working to strengthen continental narratives. The senior diplomats took part in a special familiarization and networking event aimed at strengthening collaboration between African diplomatic missions and the continent's emerging media platforms. Among them, Ambassador and Deputy Head of Mission of the Gambia to Ethiopia, Lamin Fati Ali Noro Tumu, Abeme Administrative Attaché at the Embassy of Equatorial Guinea, Ambassador El Hafiz Isa, Deputy Head of Mission at the Sudanese Embassy, Mumbe Hama Undu, representative of the Zambian Embassy in Ethiopia, have spoken about their observations of Pulse of Africa. They say that establishing a pan-African media platform dedicated to African perspectives was a crucial step forward, and they expressed their gratitude to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, spearheading the project. They also expressed hope that the platform would successfully implement its plans.
I think the initiative put forward by the Prime Minister to have such a media house that will deliberate on the African narrative regarding events and happenings on the continent, regarding the history of the continent, the civilization of the continent, and the development trajectory of the continent, I think is an important initiative. And for a media house to be at the forefront of that, like the Pulse of Africa, I think is very important, and it's a good initiative that which Africa deserves and Africa needs at this moment, so that nobody tells us this is our story, but we take charge of telling our own story to the rest of the world. I think it's an important perspective that I gained from interacting with the Pulse of Africa today.
Actually, this was a very great experience, and we are very grateful for the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for building this, for creating this initiative, because Africa need this initiative because we are facing various critical times, and it's very important that in these critical times, Africa needs to share their own views, their own experiences, since it's happening on the ground. We are the ones here. We are the ones that are supposed to share those things out there. So I'm very grateful for this initiative, and also this platform, the POA, is going to be a very great platform for to share the African values, because we have a lot of values. We have a lot of culture to share that people don't know, and this is a very great opportunity, a very great initiative, and a very great platform to share those things.
It is excellent initiative, because as we all know that the media nowadays is very important. It can play a positive role towards the prosperity, welfare and development of the people, and at the same time it can be used as a negative tool to destroy the image of a certain community or even a certain continent. So to take this issue into account and to take an initiative to establish such institution concerning with the covering and even reflecting the true image of Africa, it is not an easy matter to be done.
What I've observed is that POA is actually redefining the way media is being portrayed in Africa, and definitely is becoming the face of Africa.
The diplomats collectively stressed the importance of unity and collaboration, calling on Africans to work together on a single platform to share their stories. They noted that such cooperation strengthens Pan-Africanism and upholds the continent's ideals of unity, solidarity, and self-representation.
I think we just need to collaborate more, we need to unite more, we need to speak with one voice, and I think that can be done through media, the media outreach. I think our media houses, our media personnel, our youth, all need to be part of this game of spreading the narrative of Africa, telling the story of Africa, the narrative that we have, the developments that are taking place. And I think the youth are very much connected today through new media platforms. And I think this Pulse of Africa can help in generating that atmosphere where African countries can collaborate more, tell their story together under one platform like the Pulse of Africa. And I think such a collaboration needs to go on, it needs to continue, and it needs to be strengthened for us to tell our Pan-Africanist view of the things happening on our continent.
African countries need to support the initiative because we need to have a platform where we're going to showcase our developmental projects.
When we saw the presentation express the mission of the institution of POA, we really satisfied that it is in line with the most of the African Union Commission mission, such as Africa We Want, and we should support this institution, and we must urge our member states to do their best to collaborate with those who are in the place to enable them to take the mission of Africa further, not only inside the continent but also outside of the continent.
The Ethiopian government give the first step of building this, and now it's all about the other countries to keep upholding this idea that the Prime Minister started. So it's all about all African countries.
African Union Commission chairperson has described the growing people-to-people partnership between China and African Union member states as a major milestone in China-Africa cooperation, underscoring its importance for deeper collaboration amid global uncertainty. In an interview with Pulse of Africa, chairperson has said China has consistently demonstrated its commitment to Africa through action rather than rhetoric. He noted that China has proven itself to be a loyal and friendly partner, delivering tangible results that have strengthened trust and cooperation with African countries over the years. Highlighting the current global context, the AUC chairperson said the world is going through troubled and transformative times, making it essential for the global South to reinforce solidarity and partnerships.
It's a milestone in terms of collaboration and cooperation between China and the African member countries of the African Union. We believe that China is a loyal and very friendly country. It has proved in the past that China is not only talking, but China is doing. And we believe also that we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. We believe also that the world is passing through very troubled times. It's very important that the Global South, strengthen its relationship and see how best we can adapt ourselves to these transformations.
He stressed that closer cooperation among developing countries is critical to adapting to economic, political, and technological shifts shaping the international system. Chairperson also emphasized the need for Africa to learn from China's development experience, particularly in technology transfer, skills development, and industrial know-how.
We also believe that if China has become one of the first, developing country, one of the world, economic power, we need to learn from China. In this continent, we need to ask China transfer of technology, know-how, and we also have to accelerate our own transformation on the continent. And we have the plans and strategies for that. And we also believe that China will help the African countries to rise up to the challenges of this time.
He said Africa must accelerate its own transformation through clear strategies and long-term plans, expressing confidence that China will continue to support African countries in addressing contemporary challenges and advancing sustainable developments.
In Ethiopia, more homes and businesses now have access to electricity. Access to power supports education, healthcare, and local businesses. Light changes lives.
The National Geographic Photo Camp is an international storytelling program that introduces young people to the power of photography. The National Geographic Society has held a series of photo camps at locations throughout Africa, including Uganda, Ghana, Botswana, and Angola, and for the first time this year, Namibia. These week-long interactive experiences, led by National Geographic explorers and locally based photographers and educators, introduce young people to the basics of photography, storytelling, and editing. They also provide them with field assignments where they are asked to reflect on the ways we are all connected to water, explore traditional knowledge and stories, and engage with the community and the world around them. With cameras in hand and a question to consider, these students take photographs of the places, people, and things that are important to them. During the photo camp in Namibia, local youth were introduced to photography and storytelling with guidance from renowned National Geographic explorers. They led the students on assignments that invited them to explore the world around them, getting to know each other and their communities, and harnessing the power of their own voices. Tunisia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Migration and Tunisia's Abroad, Mohamed El Nafti, received Jong Bei Lee, president of the Korea-Tunisia Parliamentary Friendship Group, who is paying an official visit to Tunisia, accompanied by members of the group. During the meeting, the Tunisian minister praised the strong level reached by relations of friendship and cooperation between Tunisia and the Republic of Korea since their establishment. He reaffirmed Tunisia's commitment to further strengthening this partnership, particularly in high-value sectors such as information and communication technologies, digital services, artificial intelligence, digital health, scientific research, and higher education. The minister also highlighted the positive impact of Tunisian-Korean cooperation on the development of strategic sectors and key public services, notably administrative digitalization, human capital development, startup creation, and good governance. In this context, he cited successful joint projects, including TUNEPS, which focuses on the digitalization of public procurement systems, and the TLIS, aimed at modernizing Tunisia's land registry through digital solutions. He further commended the pivotal role played by the Korea International Cooperation Agency, KOICA, in sustaining and expanding this cooperation over the past 3 decades. Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko declared that the country's public debt remains sustainable and firmly ruled out any debt restructuring during a joint press conference in Dakar with Mauritanian Prime Minister Mohamed Ould Boubacar. In our business news, we also cited that Sonko stated, all the analytical work we have carried out shows that it is possible to exit this difficult situation without resorting to restructuring. He insists that Senegal has successfully met its repayment obligations for the past 18 months and described the debt as manageable. Our growth and revenue projections are reasonable and have been validated by our partners, including the IMF, he added, rejecting any external pressure to restructure as unnecessary. Finance Minister Sheikh Diba indicated in late December that talks were advancing rapidly on data reconciliation, fiscal consolidation, and debt transparency, with hopes of concluding the agreement quote-unquote very soon, following a new IMF mission chief's arrival in January 2026. Despite heavy debt service payments scheduled for 2026, revised 11% higher than initial forecasts, Sonko emphasized that Senegal intends to honor all commitments through strengthened domestic revenue mobilization and strict expenditure control, describing restructuring as a quote-unquote a disgrace, equivalent to admitting bankruptcy. Zanaga Iron Ore Coal Limited said it has completed its project value enhancement initiative for the Zanaga Iron Ore project in the Republic of Congo. The company said the completed work streams point to 11,325 millions of US dollars of potential revenue upside over the project's initial 30-year life due to product grade improvements previously announced in June 2025. It also flagged potential combined capital expenditure savings of 352 million US dollars and combined cash cost savings of 2,235 million US dollars over the same period in its RNS statement. The outcomes of these value enhancement work streams are significant for the Zanaga project, as each has delivered meaningful improvements to the risk and engineering basis, environmental performance, and project economics, said Chief Executive Martin Knuth. Importantly, we are now in a strong position to advance through the FEED phase with the confidence that the development pathway is optimized for both value creation and sustainability, benefiting the company and its stakeholders. The company said it plans to release a combined updated assessment of project economics in February 2026, alongside a project development strategy update. Finally, sport news. After a strong first half of the season with Bournemouth, Antoine Semenyo has attracted interest from several Premier League giants. The Ghanaian international, a key figure under Andoni Iraola, impressed last season with 11 goals and 5 assists and raised his level again this year, contributing to 13 of Bournemouth's 34 league goals. His performances quickly made him one of the most coveted attacking profiles in England. Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, Manchester United, and Manchester City all showed interest, especially with a £7 million release clause available from January 1 to 10. The trend soon became clear, pointing towards the Etihad Stadium. After scoring a decisive goal in added time against Tottenham to seal a 3-2 win for the Cherries, Semenyo played his final match for Bournemouth before Manchester City completed the deal. Manchester City confirmed the signing of the 26-year-old, who committed to the club until 2031. According to The Athletic, the transfer amounts to £72 million plus bonuses and a resale percentage, making it Bournemouth's biggest sell ever. After consultations to address lingering concerns around officiating standards, the Confederation of African Football has finally confirmed the referees for the Africa Cup of Nations quarter-final fixtures. The appointments follow a high-level meeting aimed at restoring confidence and ensuring consistency as the tournament enters its decisive phase. One of the standout assignments sees Mauritanian referee Dahan Beida take charge of the heavyweight quarter-final clash between Cameroon and Morocco, scheduled for today at the Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium in Rabat. Beida will be supported by an experienced officiating team, including assistants Gerson Emiliano dos Santos and Ivan Dalio Merels de Oliveira Sanchez, with Steven Mutasi Moyo also on duty. Mahmoud Ali Mahmoud Ismail has been named as fourth official. CAF has also reinforced the importance of video technology for the knockout games, appointing Ghanaian referee Daniel Niayi Lareya as the video assistant referee for the Cameroon versus Morocco encounter. The composition of the team reflects CAF's intention to blend experience and regional balance. Let's take a look at the weather forecast across Africa. That's all for this hour. Before I conclude, I would like to invite you to watch our weekly program, Roundup, which is coming up next. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye. Hello and welcome. Our discussion today examines Algeria's decision to declare French colonial rule a crime and its renewed call for reparations. More broadly, it raises critical questions about decriminalization of colonialism, the limits of historical justice in international law, and the repoliticization of colonial memory in contemporary diplomacy. Rather than treating this as a symbolic gesture, we will analyze it as a political, legal, and historical intervention situated within Algeria-France relations, African demands for reparative justice, and global debates over colonial accountability. To begin, Raoul, could you walk us through the nature of French invasion of Algeria in 1830 and the character of colonial rule that followed?
Thank you, Adam, for this opportunity. And I want to start by quoting a particularly important person in Algeria's independence. And he stated that colonialism is not a thinking machine, nor a body endowed with reasoning faculties. It is a violence in its natural state. This was a quote from Frantz Fanon from his book of The Wretch of the Earth. So Fanon's observation is useful here not as a rhetoric, but as a structural description of how the colonial rule was practiced in that time. So France's 1830 invasion is particularly different from the norm of colonial invasion at that time, from the indirect rules of the British rule. And what made it particularly different is instead of making the colonial land as part of a colonial state, they integrated it into their own nation, meaning Algeria was gradually integrated into the French state. But while the indigenous populations were excluded from citizenship or any political rights, that makes it very different and creates a particular set of political tensions that rise. So the contradiction is territorial incorporation without political inequality. So that defined the colonial rule that was persistent in the French colonial rule of Algeria. So furthermore, we can list at least three characters of the colonial rule. The first is systematic land exploitation. The second is forced displacement. And the third and most important is legal inequalities. So the French military campaigns through the 19th century relied on village destruction, mass arrests, and policies that produced particularly economic situations that resulted in famine conditions. These were not just isolated actions, but a recurring method of control that can be backed by even the French military archives that are available. So, during the Algerian War of Independence from 1954 to 1962, the system entered its most violent phase, which means scholarly research by historians such as Benjamin Stora and Raphael Branche say that documents that are available are widespread use of torture as a means of control, enforced disappearances, and that resulted in the civilian populations to be heavily affected, which means while casualties estimates may vary from different sources, the broader agreement is that the war produced deep demographic and psychological trauma that are still persistent in today's Algeria.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned the deep demographic tensions as well as the resulting traumatic experiences Algeria has experienced through this struggle for independence. But in particular, you've mentioned the colonial system had been very brutal in its context, enforcing systematic land exploitation and forced displacement as well. But how did it shape Algeria's long and violent struggle for independence?
Post-independence relations between Algeria and France are best understood as structurally interconnected but politically unsettled, which means, on one hand, cooperation continues across several sectors like energy, export, trade, security, and migration ties. On the other hand, with a large Algerian origin population in France, there is unresolved historical questions that continue to strain the relationship between the two countries. So this includes disputes over archival accesses, the return of human remains, and the public narrative surrounding the independence war. Particularly in Algerian independence war is a sensitive topic because many of people have different narratives. When we go to the veterans that were involved in the war or the French people, some still think the independence was more of a succession and they lost some land instead of Algeria gaining its independence. And on the other hand, the Algerians see their independence as a matter of national identity. And this creates a large tension between the two countries. So I believe the relation is, as I've said, understood as structurally interconnected but politically unsettled.
Let's turn to the law itself, recently mandated by Algeria's parliamentary institution. So how was Algeria's legislation criminalizing French colonial rule conducted? Was it legally and politically based on, and how did the parliamentary process unfold?
So the legislation is a domestic memory law, which means that is grounded on Algeria's sovereignty, sovereign autonomy to define their historical memories or historical experiences. Meaning parliamentary debates framed colonialism as a system that resulted in a far more violence and long-term consequences. They emphasized some points that I want to mention that are structural harm, economic and cultural dispossession, and intergenerational impact. Crucially, the law does not establish mechanisms for international prosecution. It is not an attempt to retroactively apply international criminal law. Instead, it is an attempt to show a political and symbolic declaration saying that this is wrong, similarly in form to other national memories, especially even in France's. We can find in France's own legal recognition that it recognizes slavery as a wrong or a crime against humanity in particular. So I believe it's in the same force and the same method Algeria is trying to establish that what happened to her was a crime against humanity.
So let's move to France's reaction and Algeria's defense. How did France respond to this law? And how has Algeria defended its position in terms of implementing it?
France expressed concerns that the law risks politicizing historical interpretation and complicating diplomatic relations between the two countries. So officials emphasized that the importance of shared historical dialogue is more important than framing this as a legal way of legally framing it unilaterally. They said we should discuss about this to further smoothen our diplomatic relations. So Algeria defended the law by saying it's an internal act of remembrance, and instead of stressing its sovereignty right, instead of a threat against the French country, it is more of a internal act of remembrance and recognition and seeking of recognition of the war of independence that Algeria has. It's more of a plea for recognition rather than a push for a threat to France.
When you mentioned previously about national memory regarding Algeria's colonial past, it moves us back to what President Emmanuel Macron previously described colonialism as a crime against humanity, quote unquote. So yet he stopped short of issuing a formal apology. How should we understand the contradiction that lies within this?
Well, it's important to note that Macron's statement resulted in a huge rhetorical shift in France's political discourse. But, however, a formal apology carries legal and political implications that remain deeply contested within France's own domestic area. So, the domestic constraints that are present in French include opposition from right-wing parties, from veteran groups, like I've mentioned before, and the settler descendants. So the communities have limited how far recognition can go, even if the president stated how this really carries a legal and political implication and recognized how Algerians have suffered. Its domestic constraints result in a position that really pushes the recognition, and it kind of makes it unresolved, and that results in diplomatic flexibility, but it leaves real recognition.
That's very informative, Raul, but you've mentioned before that this law lacks international enforcement, meaning that it has limits regarding the enforcement, and it has no international reach. So why does this law in particular carry no international reach?
Well, international law particularly places clear limitations on such efforts. This include the non-retroactivity of criminal law, state immunity, the absence of international jurisdiction over historical colonial acts. As a result, the law operates primarily as a normative and diplomatic instrument. Its significance lies in narrative framing and political signaling rather than merely legal enforcement.
How does Algeria's move align with the African Union's 2025 agenda on reparations and justice?
Well, it's important to see that Algeria's legislation fits into a broader continental trend rather than an isolated act, because the African Union has increasingly emphasized reparative justice, focusing on the restitution of cultural artifacts, the return of human remains, and archival access and historical acknowledgements. So I believe Algeria joined in the trend and was pushed to recognize this legally, not as an isolated action, but more or less a continental move towards recognition and Algeria's move reflects this wider momentum rather than its own position. Rather than being restricted to its own position.
So you've stated that it has a broader significance. It brings colonial history in center of modern politics. So finally, what does Algeria's decision signify politically? How does it pull colonial history back into the center of contemporary international relations?
Well, politically, the law reflects a broader shift on how former colonies engage with their past. So colonialism is increasingly treated not as a closed history, but as a structure whose effect is clearly seen in the present, that continue to shape today's political and economic realities. So by legalizing memory, Algeria asserts narrative authority and reframes colonialism as an unresolved political condition rather than a mere historical fact that happened in the past. So I believe this really repositions itself in the contemporary political international relation as an important step forward.
Thank you very much, Raoul. That concludes our discussion. This discussion shows that Algeria's law is less about retroactive punishment and more about reclaiming historical agency. It reflects a broader transformation in how African states engage with colonial legacies, no longer as passive memory, but as a site of active political negotiation.